thing was, I knew I was going to work for someone. I had to provide for my children, and I wanted to give it a try working for myself. I saw only the opportunity. What I didn't see was that my children were going to become teenagers, that I was going to be on a 6:30 flight every morning. My suitcase weighed the same as every guy's suitcase, and I was in high heels. But you can't imagine what's really ahead. The days were long, so gratifying, and long. My mother used to say, no matter who your mother or daddy were, every bucket stands on its own bottom. Meaning, you can make your own way, you can make your own reputation, you can make your own decisions for good or ill, but you rest on them. Poppies, California poppies. I love this sign. You be in the garden. I've never been involved in ownership of a business that has failed. My present company is in oil and gas minerals, and it has been very, very successful. I started it after the merger of Owen Healthcare with Cardinal. Since then, our new company, Mansfeld Investments, is flourishing and allowed me to start a foundation of my own. The Dian Graves Owen Foundation, Graves being my maiden name, Owen my married name, and the name of my first company.
In the first 20 years, we've given away over $100 million, which is far more than what she started with in '97. And we'll give away the next $100 million in 6 years.
We support many, many endeavors. Right now, we're very preoccupied with the various hurricane victims. Also, the fires in California, we'll be able to help there.
The grants reflect Diane's personal interests. One of her big interests is historic preservation. She's very active in arts, very active in education. People thank me all the time for what happens here, and I always respond, it's Diane's pleasure.
When Jean met Dian, it was like in 1969, and he had just founded a company in Fort Worth. And he went out to Abilene, he met Dian, they got along, so they got married.
As infatuated as I was, nevertheless, I needed security. And I felt that his position as a major hospital pharmacist would ensure that for me, my children, and so we married.
And about the first week of their marriage, Dian said, "How was your week?" He said, "Well, pretty good, except I got fired today."
He was fired at Christmas time in 1969, and that was probably one of the best things that could ever have happened, because it meant the marriage was a marriage. And so we both pitched in together saying, what do we do next?
He was very much an entrepreneur, really into a salesman, a born salesman. And Dian said, "No, I don't think so. You started one company, let's start another."
We had about $250 in the bank because all of his money was tied up in his company that he was trying to start. But he was fired, so we start over. We had one good friend who called us in January and said, "Are you still doing for hospitals what you said you could do?" My husband said, "Oh yes, of course." So we borrowed some money from my ex-in-laws. Our company was dedicated to improving service in acute care hospitals. We managed the hospital pharmacies in those hospitals. We provided all of the staff, the inventory, the training, all of those things, something that had never been done before in hospitals.
Back then, 99% of the hospitals ran their own pharmacies. And so we were a real anomaly. And talking them in, if we called on 100 hospitals, we'd do a proposal in 10, and we might sign 1.
And a few people trusted us, and once we delivered, it was exciting how we began to follow up and make relationships in the industry. And it was great.
In September of 1976, Jean was flying back from Atlanta, and we were all on our way there to meet him, and his plane crashed. And so suddenly, Dian lost her husband. She suddenly was, co-founder of the company and was responsible for steering us through some pretty tough times.
The thing about my husband's death was, at the time, we had 20 hospitals. 75% of those were owned by one other company. So about 3 weeks after my husband's death, they came to me and said, "We want to buy your company." I said, well, I'm not that far, And they said, well, you either sell or we're going to cancel our contracts. And I just got so angry that I said, I don't think so.
Jean and I made a deal on a Thursday, and he got killed on Saturday. And so I came in and started to work on Monday, earlier than I had anticipated.
Right after I took over the company, it was in terrible financial shape. I had to sell my house to make payroll for a few more months. I had to do that 3 different times with Owen Healthcare.
I gotta admit, I don't think I ever thought I was coming in to close up shop. Now, we were in a pretty precarious cash position, and quite frankly, had our major customer not taken the cash discount and paid on a timely basis, within about 2 weeks we would have been bankrupt.
When that major client, who had 20 of our 26 accounts, said he wanted to buy the company, she just thought that would be the wrong thing to do.
Well, incidentally, that company did indeed start their own pharmacy management company. It went into competition with us. And in 3 years, we put them out of business.
It was valued for less than $1 million. So when we sold it for, about $475 million, 22 years later. So yes, she would not have received very much for it. She received substantially more as a result of having run it for 22 years.
I think my work ethic was intact from the day I was born, simply because it was everywhere, all around us. My grandparents worked very hard. My father was so proud of his job. It was a pipeline job. It wasn't anything esoteric, but he was very proud of his job, his reputation, his ability to serve his company. Very proud, and it reflected in our home. So from my earliest days, I thought the greatest fun would be to work, to add to something, to build something.
Well, I had faith in Dian, I had faith in Carl Isgren, our president, and I had faith in myself. But I will tell you this, it was nervous times. Jean had borrowed something like $300,000 from a bank and invested it in soybean crop in Mississippi as a tax write-off.
Yes, Jean had taken out a bank loan, paid them the money, we were going to get the money back.
So we spent a year and a half praying for the soybean crop, because if it had failed, it would have put us under. I mean, there would have been no turning back.
Turned out that the accounting was pretty bad, and we restated the financial statements, and we actually ended up with enough unrecorded liabilities for the year that we didn't need that tax rattle deduction. We would have been fine without it, had the books been current.
Our growth from 200 hospitals in 1976 to around 500 when I sold the company was grueling, hard work and more fun than I could ever tell anyone. We all worked so hard. I had such wonderful people. We would wake up and say, thank God it's Monday. I always felt you have to have a higher purpose. And so we always spoke not of practicing pharmacy, but our role in helping to heal people. So these were young people and just starting their careers when I took over the company. And several years later, they began to marry and to have children. And my burden got really heavy because I felt so responsible as the sole shareholder, and the responsibility, the risk was all mine, but so was the responsibility. And so I tried to look out for them, to understand the scheduling things that they were going through. We just grew together and sacrificed and did double time, whatever it took. That's why I established an ESOP in 1984, so that my employees could have stock ownership as well. They built the company. It was the first time that we'd been able to really see that we were going to be successful. I wanted to share that success with the people who were building my company. So ergo, the ESOP. We also were in a position financially so that the company could buy my stock to establish the ESOP. So they bought a third of my stock. So for the first time in years and years and years, I was not totally dependent on the success of Owen Healthcare. That was gratifying to me. But it was also the right thing to share with those employees. Now, the really good thing, the exciting thing is that when we merged with Cardinal Healthcare, very successful Fortune 500 company, many of those clerks and secretaries and pharmacists became millionaires.
Yes, I was a part of the ESOP that Dian set up for Owen Healthcare. And it was basically over a 10-year period, she ended up giving, a quarter of the company to the employees. And that was fantastic. That really helped our growth because everybody was vested. Everybody was, the company's success was personal success.
She made a lot of people millionaires through her ESOP.
Dian treated her employees better than most people treat their children. She loved her employees and they knew it. And it's interesting. I've seen entrepreneurs that can't give away power to their employees. And Dian did.
From the outside looking in, if you're trying to decide what would motivate Dian to give the stock plan to her employees when she knew that she was about to capitalize and make a great deal of money, why would she do that? I've thought a lot about that, actually. And I think some people choose to live their life with a spirit of generosity and a spirit of gratitude. And I think that's the way Dian lives her life. She is ultimately grateful for her blessings, and both her personality and her religious beliefs dictate that she share it. And that's what she's done.
Dian has a golden gut with people. That's one of her strengths.
Doesn't sound very attractive, but it has served me well. The few times when I have listened to someone else's advice and it has gone wrong, that's the most defeating. It's a personal insult that only you're aware of, but you denied yourself. You didn't act in your best interest, knowing what that was. So that's very disappointing.
She rarely made mistakes on people.
Her gut reaction on things is about 99% right.
I just woke up one day and said, I don't want to go to work today. I always enjoyed going to work, and I told Dian, it's time for me to quit. She said, if it's time for you to quit, then it's time to sell the company. And that's what we did. That discussion took about that long to have.
I think part of her golden gut is that she really listens. She really hears what people are saying to her, and she's incredibly observant. I think her ability to observe even little things is important. Dian will never say, this is Jane Beard, she works for me. Never happens. This is Jane Beard, we work together.
How do you make a decision about somebody and make a deal with somebody in 20 minutes? I don't know. I don't know that I could have done that, but that's Dian. This is the map room for MDJ Minerals. 19 years ago, when we purchased FINA's assets out of West Texas, we kept these. The minerals were part of it. It was a small part of the purchase price, but we, Mansfeld, Dian, and the foundation, and I bought half, and Dodge Jones Foundation bought the other half, and we've kept those for 19 years. 21 years ago, Dian ended up with a slug of Cardinal Healthcare stock. And so the charge was to diversify. So in December of '98, the French company Total bought FINA, American Petrofina, and oil was $10 a barrel or less. Total made FINA sell all the non-core assets, which included a bunch of assets in the Permian Basin. Didn't know that then. There was no shale play then. So we bought their working interests, that is, their interest in these fields. And we bought their minerals, and it was about 1 million acres. That deal was the pivotal deal in so many ways, and we picked up a partner in that deal later. And that partner led us to probably 25 to 30 of the best private equity investments that we've made in this time period, in the last 20 years.
I think one of the things that's been so exciting when I sit here with Tucker and he's throwing out county names, and there are all these desolate places where no one could survive, those were places I grew up in. But my dad was just a common pipeliner, you know. But I heard all the names, Mentone, Reeves County, Culberson, all of those growing up, and then here you are. Well, the interesting thing about retirement is you never get a day off. That's one of my husband's expressions. I work because I love to work. If I were not working for money, for gain, I would be working anyway. I'd be volunteering. I would be doing something. I mean, we're not put here to suck up air. So I like to work. I like to stay busy. I like to think I'm contributing something.
Her foundation in Abilene is just amazing. I think she founded it with $30 million, and today it's worth $180 million, and it's probably given away $180 million.
There are foundations out there that only do 2 or 3 things, or their only focus is, say, animal welfare or women's health. I love the fact that Dian's interests are so varied. One of the things, in fact, that's kind of in the blueprint stage for us is a thing called Abilene Heritage Square, which is a 1923 academic Gothic architecture. It was built on the main street in Abilene, right next to the railroad tracks, because the community wanted it to be a billboard to people passing through Abilene to say that Abilene was a town that believed in education.
I think Mansfeld Investments will continue to grow. We have asset quality that is envied by everyone in the business. So I think we'll continue to grow, and as we do, the foundation owns a large part of those minerals, so it will grow as well. So there's another challenge. I mean, we're more on the map now. Jane's gonna have a bigger job screening things for me in the foundation. We'll also be able to give more money. That's the good deal.
It is a pleasure and a personal honor to introduce Dian Stai this evening and welcome her to the 2016 Legends class of the Texas Business Hall of Fame.
It's the magic of West Texas. And Dian knows it, sees it, and embodies it, and wants to make sure that she's done her part to keep that spirit alive.
We don't really see what's ahead. Maybe we would turn back if we did. I'm so glad I didn't turn back because it was exciting, it was exhilarating. I believe we did good.